Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another FNAF video. As always, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, ring that notification bell. It's very important to do that because it really boosts out the algorithm and it also helps me a lot. So I really appreciate if you hit that like button, subscribe. But friend of the channel is back with another FNAF video and can't wait for it. And apologies on me being a little bit late and also missing last week's FNAF video, because if you've been with me for either 5 minutes, a couple weeks, months, at this point, 3 years ever since I've been affiliate, first of all, I always appreciate you and I love you platonically, that is. However long you've been here, but you know that we typically do the FNAF videos on Friday because, hey, it's Five Nights at Freddy's, Fazbear, Faz Fest Friday, whatever alliteration name we gave it when we first started doing these. But unfortunately, we did miss last week, mainly because I had to go home, my childhood home, for the weekend. Just some personal stuff, personal business. I'm not getting into the weeds, not getting to the thick of it. Not really dive into it too much. That's just all you need to know is that I just had to go home. Something needed my attention, and I'm going to leave it at that. But I am happy to be back, talk about FNAF, and cannot wait for it. So on tap for today is stuff about FNAF sister location. And honestly, I'm very curious about this topic because to me, FNAF sister location is a game where I feel like, and the same token as like FNAF 1 and FNAF 2, like I feel like we as a community have already ripped apart everything and every secret that sister location has, the game itself. So it's like, what other mysteries are there? And the reason why I specify sister location itself is because obviously there's the sister location room hidden in the pizza plats, and it's still the whole mystery of whether that is the same room that you as a player, who we assume to be Michael Afton, go in between nights at sister location. Instead of going to the house, they're going to the pizza plats bunker. Is that the actual room that Michael Afton goes to in between nights at this location? Is it just a mock-up inspiration, you know, using like the glitch trap stuff to mimic rooms? That's from the pizza plats. It's still a mystery, but I'm talking about the exact sister location game itself. I feel like we've answered a lot. So what have we not figured out? And that's what we'll figure out today. Hopefully.
1578. Do you recognize these numbers? Because they're one of the strangest parts of the entirety of Five Nights at Freddy's, hidden inside of one of the most lore-filled games we'd ever gotten. But to be fair, you might not recognize the code. Not only were they incredibly hard to find in the only game they appeared in, but the second time they were referenced in the series is in a now unplayable game. But this code, originally found in Sister Location, might hold the key to finally understanding the beginning of the FNAF timeline. Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory.
Nice hook. All right, so off rip, no one's Sister Location. What are the possible places where we could see that code 1578? There's the number sequence that Baby gives you in night 2. So for those who are not aware, may not remember, because you know what? I understand, I totally get it. Sister Location is, I believe, what, a decade old? I believe it came out in 2015. They're 2014 and 2015. So it's over a decade old, which, fun fact about how old FNAF games are, FNAF VR Help Wanted 1 just had their like 4-year anniversary like a day or two ago. Which is, to me, mind-boggling that the FNAF VR games are like 3-4 years old. It's crazy. It feels like those games literally came out last week. So I understand it's been a decade. So it may be hard to remember. But in night 2, hand unit tells you like, oh, you don't need to see Circus Baby, because if you remember, we actually never see Circus Baby in the game, which is very weird, very bizarre, because they were on all the promotional material, all the trailers. They were like the head animatronic, right? It was them. They were the face of this new sister location, um, experimentation room, bunker, um, laboratory where we do experiments on them, a warehouse where we ship these animatronics off to birthday parties, whatever role it had. Baby was like the star. They were the face. But we actually never interact with Baby. The one and only time we see the Baby animatronic in form is in night 5, but they are, slumped over like this, like FNAF 1 and FNAF 2 Golden Freddy, because their endoskeleton was scooped out. So pretty much the entire game, we never see Baby at all, which was so bizarre at the time. But reason I bring all that up is in night 2, hand unit, the Go Andy Field, says like, oh, there's no reason for you to go see Baby. Go to, I believe that was the night where you go to the Funtime Freddy room and you restore power to all those rooms, including the observation rooms, which we've talked about in a ton of previous videos, talking about how that connects to FNAF 4, that connects to FNAF Security Breach, at least the Ruin DLC, possibly FNAF Seeker the Mimic, FNAF 6, FNAF VR Help 1 and 2. But hand unit says that there's no reason for you to go visit Circus Baby, but the vent shaft opens, allowing you to go through it. And if you do go through that vent and you hide under the desk, Baby speaks to you saying like, oh, I was on stage once, but only for one day. And she talked about like how she was acutely aware of how many people, especially kids, were around the room with her. And she would count down like, oh, there was 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, then 4, then 7, and then there was 1. Something happened when there was 1. A girl approached her, got too close, and then next thing you know, Baby's stomach hatch opened, and a giant claw came out, grabbed the girl, who ended up being Elizabeth Afton, and killed her. And that's how, at least we've always assumed, because it's never been confirmed. Very little things are confirmed in the series, but Baby's eyes always represented by the color blue. But after that moment, Elizabeth Afton had green eyes, and in every single iteration afterwards, we see Baby, we see her with green eyes, meaning we've always assumed that Elizabeth Afton with green eyes is now possessing Baby, because that's why Baby now has green eyes, because originally they only had blue eyes. So that's one possibility of where the code's from, because it lists off numbers. Another time, coincidentally, with Baby, is in night 5, the one and only time you see Baby. She gives you a 5 or 6 digit number code, where as soon as you enter the code, it allows you to take like this little metal chip that is like on her shoulder attached to her endoskeleton, and we plug into our database device. It's not really sure what the device is exactly, and she's able to continue to speak to us. That is also something that we have talked about. I don't know if it's recent, because it feels like it was several months ago, but we believe that green chip that we retrieved after entering that code is tied to the Mimic software, and that could have been what was the, found, discovered glitching software that became Glitch Trap. Because if you remember, in the development cycle of the FNAF VR game, which again is not just a VR game for us in the real world for it's cool because it's FNAF and scary because it's in VR, but it was an actual VR game in universe. to try to undo and try to poke fun at these skeletons in the closet and have a lot more of a positive image so they beat this VR game. And Fazbear Entertainment does what Fazbear Entertainment does. They rush the development cycle trying to get out as quick as possible. They cut corners. And one of the things they did is they found this weird software technology, computer chips, and they just plugged it into their development of the VR game. And one of those things they plugged in was Glitch Trap. And we believe that green chip could potentially be the Glitch Trap mimic virus. That's what was discovered. Possibly. But I feel like that's a whole other video. Shameless plug. We have talked about that a lot more. So if you want to see that video, you can go watch that. And if I remember, I will leave a link in the description for that video so you can go watch that. But obviously, go watch that video once you're done with this one. All right, cool. Appreciate it. Any other times I remember codes? I mean, you enter 1983 in the Ennard secret room, which reveals cameras of the FNAF 4 house. But that's not really a code. And I feel like 1983 has been taught to death, so that's not it. Maybe there's another time I'm missing. Let me know. But to my knowledge, those are the 3 times I'm remembering numbers being involved in Sister Location.
In Sister Location, you can hide under the desk in Circus Control, the room that is supposed to overlook Circus Baby's area. You have to do this to defend yourself from the Biddy Babs, and you can optionally do it the next night to listen to Circus Baby's story, where she tells you about how she was at a party, and she was subconsciously counting the amount of kids in the room, and once there was one, she doesn't say she killed it, but she says there was screaming and then silence. And combining that concept with this clip that we see in the 8-bit minigame, and these audio clips we get in between nights,
Daddy, why won't you let me play with her?
it's pretty straightforward to assume that Circus Baby killed Elizabeth Afton in this moment. She was alone with Elizabeth Afton, and her programming took over, forcing her to kidnap her, and in the process, accidentally killing her. William Afton...
Not only that, but also one of the funniest troll moments that Scott Cawthon has ever done, and I've talked about this time and time again, so apologies if I'm repeating myself, but one of the funniest, most iconic troll moments, because Scott Cawthon is a massive troll, and he knows internet culture, internet memes, respectively. So, recap, if you remember, but again, this was over a decade ago, so I don't know if people remember, but at least I do. So let me share my memories I've been stored for over a decade and broadcast them to you, whether you care or not. But in the early days of FNAF, when it was first come on the scene in 2014, we were literally getting a game, or at least a trailer, promotional image, teaser, something, it felt like month. FNAF 1 came out, and then like a month later, Scott released a teaser image for FNAF 2, the sequel. And then, a couple months later, the trailer came out, then FNAF 2 came out. And then after FNAF 2 came out, within maybe 2 months, he released a trailer for FNAF 3. And then a week or 2 later, he released this promotional teaser images where it's count down the days, 10, 9, 8, 7. Each day he was going to release a new teaser image teasing to FNAF 3. He was 10, 9, and then not even finishing the countdown, he just randomly released FNAF 3 just out in the zeitgeist, out of nowhere. And then FNAF 4 came out, and kind of same deal. And then after FNAF 4 came out, that's when it was believed to be the story is over, because remember, FNAF 4 was talked about as the end of the original story. We as a community were looking at the games FNAF 1, FNAF 2, FNAF 3, FNAF 4, and that's when the whole dream theory really got its kickstart, where stuff that Scott Cawthon would also release following the release of FNAF 4, like what is seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. 4 games, 1 story. Why is a tiny toy chica missing her beak? Those little nods that Scott Cawthon posted in the internet zeitgeist following the release of FNAF 4. And Dream Theory is where we came up with what we believe to be the answers. Then following the first 4 games, that's when we got the original trilogy of books, the Silver Eyes, the Twisted Ones, and the Fourth Closet. And then there was a break. After the first 4 games, the books, there was a bit of a break between FNAF 4 and Dislocation. Like, maybe like a year and some change between FNAF 4 coming out and Dislocation coming out. Now, the reason why I bring all that up and the reason why I brought this whole timeline of FNAF 1 happened, FNAF 2, FNAF 3, FNAF 4, the original trilogy of books, the gap between FNAF 4 and Dislocation being quite a while. The reason why I bring all that up is because it was a while since we got a FNAF game, because again, we as a community were so used to getting a new FNAF game every like month or two. So to have us wait like a year in between FNAF 4 and Dislocation, we got antsy, we got impatient, and something that happened during development of FNAF Dislocation is the community went through source codes and released a bunch of leaks for the game's Dislocation. Scott got wind of this, of said leaks, and what he did is he posted on, I want to say it was the Scott Games website or FNAF 4, but I want to say it was Scott Games. But regardless, one of his 2 websites that he manages, he posted a black screen with canceled due to leaks. And that's all you saw. Just a black screen with white text that said canceled due to leaks. And as soon as that got updated, the entire internet lost their minds. Everyone was so mad at the FNAF community because of how spoiled we were. And, you know, we've been waiting for over a year for a new FNAF game to come out. And because we were so impatient, we're now not getting a new FNAF game because we were so impatient. So now the game is canceled due to leaks. But if you take the image and you put it into Photoshop and you crank the brightness up all the way to 100, it reveals a lot more text in the background revealed behind that black text. That said, like, oh, it was canceled due to gas leak. Five Phasma Entertainment following the Circus Baby incident where, again, they killed a child on property during business hours. And not only that, not any child, but it was the owner's daughter being killed. That's what it was canceled due to leaks. Was a gas leak, which was just PR talk because they wanted to avoid what really happened, which was, again, a child dying during business hours. So the whole canceled due to leaks Scott Cawthon troll is, to this day, one of my favorite moments of the entire series. Because it's just so funny. Canceled due to leaks. Whole community lost their minds and collectively hated the community at the same time. Because we thought we killed ourselves. And we're not getting a new FNAF game because we were that impatient. Scott got us all.
And had built Circus Baby for this purpose, but expressly warned Elizabeth Afton not to go near it. And she did anyway because she's a kid and there's a cool new toy. This also likely happened the day before Circus Baby's Pizza World was going to open, because according to this site teaser,
There it is. There it is. That is the image I'm talking about of the canceled due to leaks. So, that is the full image, brightened up like I was talking about. You put this image in a Photoshop, crank it up to 100, and you reveal all this text. But if you just simply went to the website, all you got was a black page, a black background with only the white text canceled due to leaks. At the time, we as a community thought Sister Location was canceled due to the leaks of the game. But no, it was a gas leak. Scott Cawthon got us all. What a fucking guy.
Day before was going to open, it was cancelled due to gas leaks, and everything was quickly shipped out of there, which seems like an appropriate reaction if your lead performer killed your daughter. And this is huge lore that we get from going out of our way to visit this under desk area and wait. But that's not the only thing you can hear here. Under that desk and in Circus Control in general, when the power is out, very rarely, you can hear Circus Baby whispering the code 1578.
Huh. I've never heard of that before. Okay. I'm now intrigued. I've never heard of that.
It's
like, I know there's some sister location like rare occurrences. Like, for instance, on rare occurrences, instead of the white Ennard mask that you would see in the main hub room, it would swap out for the Lolbit mask, the white Fatsu with like the orange and blacked out eyes and makeup. But okay.
never explained, never used in anything in Sister Location. I mean, there's a keypad where when you punch in 1983, you get the FNAF 4 cameras on the monitors. If you punch in 1587, nothing happens. This code is never referenced again, but for some reason, if you go out of your way, Circus Baby herself tells it to you directly. And that's the only time it's ever mentioned in not only Sister Location, but the rest of the playable franchise. But if you notice, I said playable, because to be honest, if that one mention was where this code's relevance ended, I probably wouldn't make this video. Like, there's a lot of weird things in FNAF games that go nowhere.
Yeah. Let's see. Off the top of my head, things that go nowhere. I don't know if people still care about this, but we still don't have concrete answers of what happened in the Bite of 87, of who the biter was, what led to it, what happened. All we know is an animatronic, again, unknown of who it was. If it has been outright confirmed or stated of who it is, let me know. But to my knowledge, it's never been stated. Because remember, the Buddy of 87 is not, and Markiplier's meme format from FNAF 4, is not the moment where the FNAF 4 crunch is shoved in the mouth of the golden Fredbear and killed during business hours. That's the Chomp of 83. Chomp of 83 and Bite of 87 are two completely different events. But the Bite of 87, all we know is an animatronic was biting someone during business hours, presumably an employee, and that caused a restaurant get shut down and the animatronics to no longer be able to roam freely during the day. We know that, but again, who the biter was, what happened, what led to it, anything, we have no idea to this day. So I feel like that has gone nowhere. What else has gone nowhere? The whole FNAF 4, what is it? What does it even mean? Is it nightmare hallucinations? Is it lab experimentation through hallucinogenic gas being pumped in the bedroom? Do we play as Michael Afton as a punishment in FNAF 4? What is FNAF 4 all about? Those lines by the second friend Fredbear doll in the end of Night 5 where it's like, oh, we're still your friends. Do you still believe that I'll put you back together? Who's the put you back together? Who's the I? Who's talking? What does I will put you back together mean? Let's see. I'm going to skip FNAF 5 because we're already kind of talking about FNAF 5. So go to the next games. FNAF 6. Midnight Motorist. Orange Mustard Man driving the purple car. Is that William Afton? Is that a different character because, again, the color is different? What is Midnight Motorist all about? Who is trapped or locked in that bedroom? Who is not allowed to leave? Not allowed to lock the door? Who was the thing that he ran off to a place again? Again, who was the he? Let's see. Custom Night. I feel like that game has been ripped apart pretty cleanly, so there's not really any mysteries there. Security Breach. Is Gregor a robot? That's still a question. I guess what is the canon ending for Security Breach? Because on one hand, you have the Princess Quest, the 3-star ending, because that entirely sets up and leads into the FNAF Ruin DLC, but also FNAF VR Help Wanted 2, because it's a follow-up to what you do in Princess Quest, right? Because if you remember, Princess Quest works where Princess Quest 1, you play it, you beat it, that unlocks Princess Quest 2. You don't get to play Princess Quest 2 until you beat 1. You don't get to play 3 until you beat 2. You don't get to play 4 until you beat 3. The only way we've seen a Princess Quest 3 and beating it is in the Princess Quest ending in Security Breach. And there's Princess Quest 4 in FNAF VR Help Wanted 2. And we also see the Princess Quest 3 machine destroyed on site in Ruin. So, presumably, that's the canon ending. But then, what caused the pizza putz to get destroyed is the burn trap blob stuff. Is that canon? Is it both Princess Quest and the burn trap ending canon? Are they both canon in their own ways? Where you take bits and pieces to make one canon ending? That's still up for debate. FNAF Seek of the Mimic? I would say my own personal question is, what did all the inventors do respectively? Edwin supposedly made the Mrs. Machine and made the spring lock suits. So then what did William Afton do and what did Henry do? Because a lot of things we believed were a William Afton or Henry creation came out as an Edwin creation and was stolen. So what did William Afton and Henry do? But obviously, that is the most recent game to come out, so we'll see what happens there in future games if that gets explained.
Because Scott, as a writer, likes to leave breadcrumbs that at the time don't go anywhere to hopefully down the line pull on them and call it foreshadow.
Breadcrumbs, except you shouldn't feed bread to ducks because otherwise they'll get trapped in their esophagus. Thanks, Mr. Hippo! And if you do not get that, I really apologize for you.
It's kind of the main way you tell an ongoing story. I personally think this is what happened with the FNAF 4 box, and that's what Scott was trying to tell us in the interview. Not necessarily that he had a plan and forgot what was in the box, but he made the box to resolve later in the story, never got around to that, and now it's so far gone that it's not relevant anymore. And there's a lot of stuff like this throughout the franchise that isn't super worth mentioning. And if that was where this code ended, I would assume 1578 was just like the FNAF 4 box. There was a plan, nothing really came through with it, and now it's too late to care about. But it is referenced one other time. In a game you cannot play. Five Nights at Freddy's Special Delivery. Special Delivery is a weird game. It's that AR Pokemon Go-like game where animatronics would visit you at your house, and you had to do 360s to protect yourself. Genuinely, I thought it was a fun game.
Because it's a lot easier to fend off animatronics coming through your phone screen than talking to your family members in your own house. Because that's a lot easier.
My biggest gripe was you can't play the game in public, because to play the game in public, you have to be in a public setting and do this. I'm genuinely dizzy. But regardless...
I mean, let's be honest. Is that not what Pokemon Go was? Like, let's just be honest. Let's call a spade, keep a Fortnite V-Bug with you. Was that not just Pokemon Go? Is crowds of people would all be looking down on their phones. And if you saw a crowd of people run to like a park or some business, all looking down on their phones, you're like, oh, they're playing Pokemon Go because they're doing a gym battle, or this like special legendary Pokemon is nearby. Like, it was obvious what was going on when you saw a crowd of people all running, huddled around in a circle, and all looking down their phones. It was obvious what was going on. I think, respectively, FNAF is not as popular as Pokemon, so they can't really get away with a game where, hey, you have thousands of people all looking down their phones and running to certain locations in the real world and bothering people. And hey, that's not a shot. Pokemon is one of the biggest IPs in the human race. And FNAF is just not that.
Of what you think about the game, it's no longer playable. It's off of app stores, the servers aren't supported, and the company that made it, I don't even think they're in business anymore. If you want to play a game like it, there are recreations. Forsaken AR is a fan game that basically rebuilds that game from the ground up. It's currently down, but I believe it's because they're remaking the entire thing in Unity, so keep your eyes out for that. But the reason I'm bringing up Five Nights at Freddy's Special Delivery is because of the custom skins in the game.
Oh, no. No! I mean, I'll be honest. Shout out to you. That's not a slow, sarcastic clap either. That's a legitimate clap. Shout out to you if you're going to try to find a way to come to terms and try to come up with an answer with these bizarre animatronics. Because, yes, FNAF has bizarre animatronics, and there's like 15 or 16 iterations of Freddy that all have varying lore implications and story arcs. That's true. And that's one of the reasons why the story gets confusing. But I feel there's a fine line in quality and lore implication story, right? There's a fine line between comparing FNAF 1 Freddy, FNAF 2 Withered Freddy, FNAF 2 Toy Freddy, Golden Freddy from FNAF 1 and FNAF 2 versus Golden Fredbear from FNAF 4, because both golden bears, but one has black bow tie and a hat, and the other Fredbear has purple hat and bow tie. Like, that's one thing, right? Completely different to talk about special living animatronics, because there's like Statue of Liberty Chica, Chocolate Bonnie, Radioactive Toxic Fotsy, Iced Out Clockwork Ballora. I think there's like a wooden tree Bonnie or Freddy. It's either Freddy or Bonnie is like made out of like wood and like bark. Please explain what lore implications a tree Freddy or Bonnie and a chocolate Bonnie, Statue of Liberty Chica, a clown Bonnie have anything to do with the lore. The lore jumps the shark. I'm aware of that. And that's one of the reasons why I love it and I'm addicted so much. But there's gotta be a bar and sense of quality, man. We can't just accept everything.
A way to sell many, many microtransactions in that game was that there was not only the cast of animatronics we've come to know and love, but custom skins for all of them, ranging from actually terrifying to very silly.
Like I said, Statue of Liberty Chica. Because why not?
Now, some of these skins are references to other things in the game. like the one we're going to talk about right now, 8-Bit Circus Baby. It's a custom skin for Circus Baby that references her 8-bit sprite from the Cupcake minigame. It's a recreation of it, but in several animations of this skin, the numbers 1, 5, 7, and 8 are all over. It's a code important enough to come back years later in this of all games. You know, funnily enough, I went to the character encyclopedia because I remembered 8-Bit Circus Baby has an entry in that book, and I was wondering if they would bring it up at all. It seems fairly relevant.
Hold on, I want to read this for a second. Data file 8-Bit Baby, a little bit bad. Gee, thanks. Animatronic humanoid, Five Nights at Freddy's AR special livery. That's just not true. 8-Bit Baby also appears in the Cupcake minigame in this location. This arcade-themed variant of Circus Baby was released as part of the Arcade Mayhem event in special livery. Unlike most of the variants released for that game, she's not just a reskin version of an existing character. 8-Bit Baby is a new character who acts differently from Circus Baby. When encountering special livery, 8-Bit Baby is more aggressive than Circus Baby. Go into haywire mode more quickly. She changes color scheme completely when that happens. When she's defeated, it explodes into pixels. I mean, okay. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know how I feel about polling the FNAF character encyclopedia as evidence for a theory because of how much it has been exposed. Everything in the character encyclopedia has been wrong, right? Like, if I'm not mistaken, some of the things, if I remember correctly, because it's been a couple of years since I thought about it, I don't believe Michael Afton is a character in the encyclopedia. An encyclopedia that details all the important characters in this franchise. You again have pages for 8-Bit Baby and like Statue of Liberty Chica and frozen iced out Ballora. But you don't include Michael Afton? The character we presumably play as in FNAF 1, FNAF 2, FNAF 3, FNAF 4, FNAF 5, FNAF 6. Oh, I guess he's just not important enough, apparently. Other things I remember. I believe it states that the FNAF 4 Crying Child is in FNAF 3, which is just not true. I believe it also misrepresents games that Charlotte the Puppet is also in. So there's a lot of things wrong in the character encyclopedia. So I'm not trying to dismiss it completely, but I'm also saying, well, let's just think about what we got here. This is already a book that is controversial and is already seen as wrong. So to me, you're fighting an uphill battle.
But not only does the character encyclopedia not bring it up, they use a render of the skin that doesn't have the numbers in it. So the only way you can prove that this skin had the numbers in it is looking up gameplay footage, because the game isn't available and it's not in the encyclopedia. This code is basically lost media. So twice now, 1578 has shown up in relation to Circus Baby. So it must mean something. We have very rarely ever gotten the same code twice. But the problem is, there's no way to solve it. People have been trying to solve this code for years, but there's no satisfying answer. So what have people come up with so far? The thing about solving this code is we don't know the question, right? Usually when you have a code, you know what you're trying to solve for. But because we don't have that, we just have a bunch of numbers. It could be 15 kids, 7 souls, 8 locations. Who knows? We cannot possibly understand what that could mean without further context. So, to make a useful conversation, most of the theorizing of this code comes down to a date. After all, with 4 digits, you can make a month, day, year, date, so long as it's before October and before the 10th. So taking the code directly, 1578 would be January 5th, 1978. Is that meaningful in any way? Not really. That year is the year before the Secret of the Mimic takes place, and it theoretically could be like Elizabeth Afton's birthday, but that seems like a weird thing to tell us. And also, if she died early in the timeline, like mid-1980s, she'd be like 8 at the time, and the vocal lines we get of Elizabeth sound arguably younger than that. It's hard to tell. So the question becomes, if we jumble the numbers, what dates can we make out of it? And that is where most of the solving dedicated to this code has gone. What dates can we make out of the code? And
But, okay, let's think about that for a second. So, I don't believe it at all that it is tied to Elizabeth Afton's birthday, but let's think about that. If 78 is when they were born, I'm doing the president doing the thumb like this. Instinctively does. I was trying to do that. But 78 is Elizabeth Afton. And it's widely assumed that FNAF 4 could take place in 1983. So she would be 5. So at the time of her death, she dies at 5, which, I mean, her voice lines sound like 5 years old, maybe. Maybe? Sounds a little bit more realistic than like 8 or 9, I guess. But again, the only reason why I point to FNAF 4 possibly being 1983 and why I've personally always assumed it is when you're playing as FNAF 4 Crying Child, if you go up to the TV in the house, you turn the TV on, and it shows the Fredbear and Friends show, and it says established in 1983. Not only that, but Scott has made a habit where if he puts something in a game, it's confusing, and it doesn't get to the audience clearly, he makes a point to correct in the following game what his intention was. Well, what was that intention? What was the change? What year do we put in the entered room in this location? 1983. Course correcting his original intention to make it clear of what his original intention was. 1983.
are those dates useful? And it turns out with 4 numbers, you can make a lot of date combinations. So when listing out all the combinations, it's most useful to list out the years you can make, because the month and day are arguably immaterial. Does it matter if it was January 5th or May 1st? Who can really say? But the years are what we're really looking at here. And the years you can make within this code are 1987, 1985, 1981, 1978, 1975, 1971, and then dates from the 50s and the 10s. And look, I'm willing to go far back in time for this timeline, but if somehow the date August 7th, 1915 is relevant to the timeline, we've lost the plot. Now, looking at these years...
Even though, isn't it widely believed that the Fredbear Saint show was like in the 40s? Was it in the 40s?
Some of them are very important. I mean, 1987, FNAF 2 and the Bite of 87. 1985 is the likely year for the missing child incident. These are super important, but that's kind of all we've ever been able to glean from it. People have linked the code to the Bite of 87 and the MCI, but there's never been anything conclusive for it. It's like, okay, sure, Circus Baby tells us the date for the MCI. Why would she do that? Some people have also linked it to Elizabeth Afton's death, which is more relevant to Circus Baby, but the question then again becomes why? Why would it be relevant, and or how could we possibly know that January 5th, 1987 is the day Elizabeth Afton died? Well, we might have a good why for a specific date now, because somebody recently sent in a theory to me, and using it, we might be able to solve that why and piece together the rest of the early timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's. Recently, Jeremy sent in a Patreon comment for the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, the podcast I host every week on this very channel. And I didn't actually bring this comment up on the podcast. I wanted to just make a video about it immediately. His comment reads, "In your previous podcast, you were trying to find William's original motive for the MCI, and I think I found a compelling one. After the bite of 83, William makes a promise to put Dave back together. Not necessarily for will care, but just for experimentation so he can see if it will work for himself in the future. William then goes on to open Circus Baby's Pizza World for the fun times, to capture children for experiments. However, on January 7th, 1985, based on the 1578 code from Sister Location and AR, Elizabeth ends up getting captured and killed. William notices Baby's eyes turn from blue to green, and he discovers possession. 5 months later, on June 26, 1985, he performs the MCI to test possession. He stuffs them in the suit, similar to how Elizabeth was stuffed into Circus Baby. However, the police investigation puts him on the run, so he can't see if it worked. Come November 1987, he performs Save Them, confirming possession by seeing the puppet and Withered Freddy going after him. TLDR, Baby's possession makes Afton test it in the MCI. And
Interesting. So here we go. For it feels like the 2000th time. Talking about the death order. Which is first? The FNAF 4 Crying Child or the Sister Elizabeth Afton? So that interpretation says that the FNAF 4 Crying Child first, then Elizabeth Afton dies in the hands of Baby. Here's my problems with that. Why is the bedroom in the house empty? What makes the FNAF 4 Crying Child scared of the animatronics? Because remember, he is a fan of the franchise because he has like plushy stuffed animals of the cool animatronics of Freddy, Fozzie, Bonnie, Chica. So he's a fan of the series. Again, you watch the Fredbear and Friends show established in 1983 in the house. So he is familiar with the franchise and he's a fan of it, right, as the plushies. So why is the bedroom empty? Why scare the animatronics? And what is it that he saw that makes him scared? Because again, for the longest time, I've been beating over the drum. I don't have a drum with me, unfortunately. But I've been beating over the head with it that Elizabeth Afton dying a baby has to come before the FNAF 4 Crying Child because logically it then makes sense. Elizabeth Afton dies at the hands of an animatronic because they get too close. That in turn explains why the bedroom is empty, but also what makes the FNAF 4 Crying Child scare the animatronics because he saw what happens when a kid, but especially it's even more so seeing his own blood, his sibling, get too close to the animatronics and they get killed. That's what makes him scared. That's why he's scared of the animatronics. That's why you see the animatronic design of Fredbear in the Night 5, why there's like teeth, looks like a mouth in the stomach area. Because again, Baby's stomach hatch opens, grabs Elizabeth Afton, brings them inside through the claw, and kills them. Why is there teeth like a mouth on Nightmare Fredbear? Around the stomach region, no less. So it explains why the bedroom is empty. It explains why the FNAF 4 Crying Child is scared of the animatronics as he saw not only what happens when a kid gets too close, but a sibling, no less, which makes it even more powerful. And also explains the design of the Nightmare Fredbear, of the stomach mouth. Those things, it doesn't add up then if he's first, or if he's at least earlier than Elizabeth Afton. Because here's another thing about it that makes it weird. Is, yes, I totally agree that the Funtime animatronics were used to lure and encapsulate kids to scoop out, harness their remnant, their soul energy. My interpretation is the remnant is used to harness enough remnant to what's the word? To start to make preparations, I guess, for William Afton's goal to try to gain immortality. So that's why he's trying to, gather as much remnant as possible using these fun animatronics that are built to lure and encapsulate kids to harness as much remnants as possible to quicker lead to his goal of immortality. Why does he make those animatronics then? If the baby incident happened what makes them make animatronics that, again, are built to lure and encapsulate kids if nothing happened yet? And again, that's what makes the whole death order of who's first, or at least who's earlier. Because I think we believe for the longest time that either Charlotte or Susie as Chica, they are first, or at least earlier. But judging of who's earlier, the FNAF 4 Crying Child or Elizabeth Afton, either way, I don't like it. I don't like it because there's evidence of why Elizabeth Afton's first, but there's also evidence for the FNAF 4 Crying Child being first. But it doesn't fit cleanly either way. If Elizabeth Afton's first, you ignore the evidence of why the FNAF 4 Crying Child is there. But if the FNAF 4 Crying Child's there, you ignore the evidence for Elizabeth Afton. So it's literally trying to stuff two puzzle pieces that do not fit. They are not supposed to fit, but you're still trying to find a way to make those puzzle pieces fit. Even though they don't, they're not supposed to, but you're still trying to find a way to explain yourself.
Genuinely, that makes a lot of sense. The MCI is one of those things that we usually want like a decent motive for William Afton to have. It helps to place it in the timeline. It would be strange if William Afton just started killing kids for no reason one day. Not to say there's any good reason for William to do that, but there should be some internal motivations for his horrible actions. And many people believe that the MCI was William Afton already experimenting with possession, which makes sense for a motivation, but where he got that idea is the hangup. It never really felt satisfying. But this gives us a compelling timeline. The Bite of 83 happens first. I and many others have been saying the Bite of 83 happens first because frankly it makes the most sense. It requires the least amount of prerequisites. The crying child being bit by Fredbear is at most a prank gone wrong. It doesn't need any weird motivations or possession or knowledge of immortality. It's a prank done by Michael Afton to his younger brother that went sour. But then after that, William Afton begins trying to figure out how to put him back together like he promised. This could then lead to the Funtime animatronics, something we just talked about being earlier in the timeline now that we have the context of Secret of the Mimic. Now, in the past, I've said the Funtimes could come before the MCI, but the logic was that he wanted to use animatronics to perform an MCI, and when that proved too dangerous because it killed Circus Baby, he scrapped it and did it himself. Which is admittedly very thin logic, because one, why does he want to do an MCI in the first place, and two, if his goal was to kill kids in an animatronic suit, Elizabeth dying proved that it worked. So I don't know what the big deal is. Something that I had been forgetting to consider all this time was the way Elizabeth died. She was stuffed into an animatronic suit. If William Afton noticed that she possessed that suit after the fact, then William Afton would have fairly direct evidence that being killed by being crushed into an animatronic suit could lead to possession. And 1 time is a fluke, but 6 times is a fact. Now his own twisted motivations for the missing child incident makes more sense. So all this in mind, what sort of timeline forms at the beginning of Five Nights at Freddy's? After acquiring Murray's costume,
that again gets into a possible question that, again, I've heard both sides of the argument. Whether William Afton stuffs the kids into the suits, and that's why it's the missing children's incident, because their bodies are never found, hence why they're missing, because they're stuffed in the suits? Or is it Charlotte the puppet gathering the dead kids and putting the bodies into the suits for them to gain more life, awakening, and trying to get revenge on the Purple Bunny Man who killed them? Again, I don't think both interpretations are valid and both have an argument. So I'm very curious what you think, which one it is.
Manor in the late 70s, William Afton learns about the Mimic, a recreation of a human as a robot. It fascinates him, the idea that if he could recreate himself, he could be effectively immortal, and he begins spending all of his time in the bunkers that Edwin Murray left, studying this Mimic and trying to find ways to achieve this perfect copy. And it's this study that leads him away from his own family, leaving Michael and Dave Afton to take care of themselves. Eventually, Michael Afton's pranks on his younger brother go too far, leading to the freak accident of the Bite of 83. Dave Afton dying in the jaws of the Fredbear animatronic. William Afton promises to put him back together, but it's more of a bet with himself. After all, Edwin Murray was able to make the Mimic, which seemingly copied David pretty well. If Edwin could figure this out, so could William. And he spends even more time in that bunker, now making the Funtime animatronics. He's finally able to make robots that mimic things.
Copies David well. Well, maybe this is just a nitpick, but I thought the story goes that Fiona dies. Her consciousness gets put into M1, later the F10 and 4 Fiona Mrs. Machine, and it goes pretty smoothly. Edwin has David die, and then he tries to do the same procedure that worked for Fiona, but it doesn't really work as well. It doesn't work from my memory. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm misinterpreting or misremembering what happened, but I thought that's how the story goes. Is M1 happens, Fiona, she possesses the Mrs. Machine. David dies, trying to possess M2, and it doesn't really work.
Just like Edwin's creation. Maybe now he'll be able to figure out what that secret extra step was. But just before Circus Baby's Pizza World can open up and he can truly start experimenting, Elizabeth Afton gets too close to Circus Baby. And the pre-programmed kidnapping works a little too well, putting Elizabeth Afton inside of Circus Baby and killing her. William Afton scraps the plan. This would all be too public if they just start rampaging. But it's in that moment that he notices Circus Baby's eyes have changed. In fact, they changed to the color of Elizabeth Afton's eyes. Did Elizabeth Afton possess Circus Baby? Were ghosts real? Is the afterlife real? Maybe William Afton wouldn't have to scientifically recreate his mind. If he could force himself to possess a robot replica of himself, what is that if not immortality? Did dying in a robotic suit cause Elizabeth Afton to possess Circus Baby? Well, to find this out, he'd have to replicate this experiment. And lucky for him, there's 5 robots he has full access to, and a restaurant full of children to try again. And that's the theory. And again, the idea that Elizabeth Afton's death is what inspired the idea of stuffing a kid into a suit makes a lot of sense. And before, I'd argue that sister location animatronics this early in the timeline doesn't make much sense, but in a post-Secret of the Mimic world where we know William Afton was looking into this technology really early, everything starts to line up pretty well. But let me know what you think of.
I mean, let's be honest, it never fit cleanly. Of this location fitting very early on the timeline, because again, you compare the robust, very simplistic animatronics like the FNAF 1, FNAF 2 days of the Core 4, and you compare it to the very futuristic Funtime animatronics where they have very advanced, like, wired endoskeletons. Their, shells are, like, split open. They're able to, remove, like, parts of their, like, stomach and mouth. more easily because it's all like plastic shelling. Um, you again have like the sun illusion discs, the voice mimics, again, huge claws and baby. None of that is a thing in like the 80s, but it's just way ahead of its time. So that was already going to be a losing battle of saying that this location was early in the time than we all thought, because we saw, again, we saw these animatronics with very futuristic designs, very advanced endoskeletons with wiring and like sound illusion discs. Oh, it must be later in the timeline. Nope, it's not. So explain that of how the animatronics go backwards. Because again, that's what makes solving the FNAF timeline very easy. And that's not sarcastic. But I don't know. Let me know your thoughts of what you think. What do you think about that? Leaving that ending question is, who stuffed the bodies in the suits? Was it Charlotte the puppet for them to try to awaken the dead kids' souls, for them to get new life in the animatronics, and for them to hunt down the purple rabbit man and to get vengeance for their early demise, early death? Or did William Afton put the kids' bodies in a suit to again lead to his immortality and possession? So yeah, very curious what you have to say about that.